Darkness welcomes you back to Void of Fears. Like this video to feed the algorithm. Comment your thoughts to summon more viewers. Subscribe to join our growing community on the road to 100k subscribers. Your support carries these nightmares to new eyes. Please help us reach our goal. Now, let's dive into the void. The observation window in my quarters offers a perfect view of Earth below. Beautiful, familiar, and soon to be just one of potentially infinite Earths we might explore. Today is the day we make history. The first human expedition through the dimensional gate. I should feel nothing but excitement. After all, this is the culmination of 15 years of work. The discovery of quantum fluctuations in deep space led us here, to the creation of technology that can breach the walls between dimensions. Yet, I can't shake this feeling of unease that's been growing since the final briefing yesterday. The director called it humanity's greatest achievement, our ability to step into a parallel Earth. She doesn't share my concerns about the increasing instability in our readings from Earth 2. The Oversight Committee dismissed them as expected anomalies in a groundbreaking experiment. I've documented my objections. That's all I can do now. My team is ready, and we will proceed as planned. 1:45 p.m. Final team assembly. Our team gathered one last time before departure. 7 of us selected from thousands of applicants. Commander Javier Rodriguez heads our expedition. Former pilot with nerves of steel and 20 years of experience leading high-risk missions. His calm confidence steadies everyone. During our final briefing, he maintained that measured tone of his, going over contingencies with the thoroughness that's made him legendary among deep space crews. We prepare for everything, even the impossible, he told us, dark eyes scanning each face to ensure his message landed. That way nothing can truly surprise us. I noticed the slight tremor in his right hand that he tried to hide, the remnant of an injury from the Europa incident 5 years ago, a reminder that even legends carry their scars. I'll serve as both physicist and second in command, focusing on dimensional theory application. The irony isn't lost on me that despite my reservations, no one knows the theoretical framework better than I do. The dimensional calibration equations that make this journey possible bear my name. Price's theorem of interdimensional constants is now standard curriculum at the Academy. Yet, theory and application exist in different realms, as we're about to discover. Dr. Aiko Nakamura, our xenobiologist, vibrates with enthusiasm about potentially encountering alternate evolutionary paths. I've never seen someone so excited about the prospect of alien microbes. Even identical starting conditions would produce fascinating divergences over billions of years, she explained during equipment checks, her fingers deftly adjusting her collection kit with practiced precision. Her excitement manifests physically. She literally bounces on her toes when discussing potential discoveries. Beneath her enthusiasm lies a brilliant analytical mind that can identify patterns in biological systems that others would miss entirely. Professor Thomas Wright joined us last minute when linguistics determined potential communication challenges might arise. His specialty in anthropological linguistics makes him uniquely qualified to interpret any evidence of Earth 2's civilization. Older than the rest of us by at least a decade, Wright brings a contemplative approach to his work. Language reveals how a species perceives reality, he often reminds us. Different dimensional conditions might produce not just different words, but entirely different concepts. The translator matrix he's developed for this mission is groundbreaking in its adaptability, designed to find patterns in any form of communication we might encounter. Elliot Park handles our technical systems. Quiet genius with equipment, utterly fearless about improvising solutions. The type who can fix anything with little more than determination and creativity. Just last month, during simulation training, He repaired a catastrophic systems failure using components from his personal communication device and a candy wrapper. Technology is just applied logic, he shrugged when praised for the innovation. If you understand the principles, the materials are secondary. His slender frame and boyish appearance belie his 35 years of experience in prototype development. Dr. Layla Ibrahim serves as our medical officer. Her work on cellular response to exotic environments earned her this position. She's developed specialized treatments for potential dimensional exposure effects, though we all hope they won't be necessary. Ibrahim carries herself with the calm confidence of someone who has witnessed every possible medical emergency and fears none of them. The human body is remarkably adaptable, she reminded us during our final physical assessments. But adaptation has limits we must respect. Her medical kit contains compounds she developed specifically for this mission. Theoretical treatments for conditions no human has yet experienced. Victor Kozlov rounds out our team as security specialist, former special forces with additional training in xenobiology, defense protocols. He's the only one who seems to share my unspoken concerns, judging by how meticulously he's checked and rechecked our defensive equipment. It's not paranoia if the threat is real, he muttered when I questioned his addition of extra ammunition to our supplies. His broad shoulders and vigilant eyes create an impression of solid dependability, yet there's an intuitive sensitivity to his observations that transcends mere tactical awareness. The atmosphere is tense but excited as we complete final equipment checks. Our specialized suits represent the pinnacle of protective technology, designed to shield us from environmental hazards and potential dimensional transit effects. Each weighs approximately 40 pounds, but distributes the weight so effectively you barely notice after the first few minutes. The gleaming white exterior reflects our station lights, making us look almost ethereal. Beneath the surface, layers of adaptive materials monitor and respond to external conditions in real time. Rodriguez runs us through the communication protocols one final time. Remember, regular check-ins every 30 minutes. If anyone experiences disorientation, unusual perceptions, or equipment issues, report immediately. There's no such thing as too much caution on this mission. The whole station is gathered to witness our departure. Some faces show excitement, others concern. Director Collins delivers a brief speech about human achievement and exploration that none of us fully register. Our minds already focused on what lies ahead. 3:27 p.m. Gate activation. We've assembled at the gate chamber. The massive ring structure dominates the room, currently filled with a swirling, opalescent energy that defies proper description. Not quite liquid, not quite light. The culmination of humanity's most advanced physics, engineering, and materials science hovers before us like a shimmering portal from ancient mythology. The comparison isn't lost on anyone present. For all our scientific understanding, we're still fundamentally humans, reaching into the unknown, just as our ancestors did when they first ventured beyond the horizon. Final systems check complete, Park announces from the control station. Dimensional coordinates locked on target Earth 2. His voice carries a slight tremor, despite his attempt at professional detachment. His fingers dance across the control surfaces with practiced efficiency, each movement confirming another system's readiness. The gateway emits a low hum that gradually shifts in pitch as the activation sequence progresses. The swirling energy within the ring intensifies, patterns forming and dissolving in hypnotic succession. Instruments around the chamber display readings that would have been considered theoretical impossibilities just decades ago. Rodriguez gives us one last look, his dark eyes meeting each team member's gaze in turn. There's determination there, but also something else. A recognition of the weight of this moment. Remember your training. We stick together, we follow protocols, and we make history. Communications check. We each confirm our systems are operational, voices overlapping slightly in our eagerness to proceed. Vitals monitoring active, Ibrahim confirms. Baseline readings established for all team members. Her calm professionalism provides a counterpoint to the electric tension in the air. Dimensional stabilizers at full capacity, I add, rechecking the readings on my wrist panel. The stabilizers represent my primary contribution to the mission technology, devices designed to maintain our physical integrity during transit and protect against dimensional anomalies. The theory is sound, but they've never been tested in actual cross-dimensional conditions. Rodriguez nods, satisfied with our preparations. Proceed through, in designated order, on my mark. I take one last look at the familiar walls of our station. The observation deck is filled with personnel, watching us with expressions ranging from excitement to envy. Director Collins gives a formal salute, her normally stern features softened by the historic significance of the moment. Mark. Rodriguez steps through first, his body seemingly elongating for an impossible moment before disappearing entirely into the shimmering gateway. Nakamura follows, then Wright, each vanishing in succession. My turn arrives. I hesitate for just a fraction of a second. A lifetime of scientific caution, warring with exploration's imperative. I step forward. The transit defies explanation. My senses struggle to interpret the experience. Colors exist where they shouldn't. Time stretches and compresses simultaneously. I feel both expanded beyond the confines of my body and crushed into an infinitesimal point. Awareness fragments into particles of sensation that scatter and reassemble in patterns that human consciousness was never designed to comprehend. There's a sensation of movement without direction, of falling through dimensions where concepts like up and down have no meaning. Information floods my perception. Too much, too fast to process. It's everything and nothing, a lifetime and an instant. The sensation lasts both an eternity and no time at all. Earth 2 arrival, approximately 5:15 p.m. local time. We emerge on solid ground. My first coherent thought is relief, as I count all 7 team members present and apparently intact. My second thought is that something is wrong with the sky. It's blue, yes, but not quite the blue it should be. Too intense, almost luminescent in patches with occasional ripples like the surface of disturbed water. The sun occupies a familiar position, yet its light carries subtle differences in quality. Shadows seem sharper, with edges that appear almost etched rather than gradual. Atmospheric composition analysis shows breathable mix, Ibrahim reports, checking her instruments. Oxygen levels comparable to Earth, no detected toxins. She adjusts settings on her monitor, frowning slightly. However, there are trace elements I can't immediately identify. Nothing that appears hazardous in these concentrations. We stand in what approximates a forest clearing. Trees surround us, appearing initially familiar until you look closer. The patterns in their bark spiral in disturbing ways. Leaves fold along geometries that seem to change when viewed peripherally. Their very structure suggests evolutionary paths, guided by slightly different physical laws. Geographic coordinates match target location, Park confirms, consulting his navigation system. We're approximately 200 kilometers north of what would be Portland on our Earth. He turns slowly, scanning our surroundings with both instruments and careful observation. Topographical features align with expected terrain configurations, though there are minor variations in elevation patterns. The ground beneath our feet feels solid, yet there's something subtly wrong about its texture, as though the very concept of solidity follows slightly different rules here. Each step produces minute sensations of adjustment, as if the earth momentarily yields before remembering its proper nature. No immediate signs of civilization, Rodriguez notes, completing a perimeter check. No structures, roads, or evidence of development within visual range. He gestures towards a nearby ridge. We should establish higher ground observation before losing daylight. Agreed, Kozlov says, already scanning tree lines and potential approach routes with practiced efficiency. This position is too exposed, limited visibility, multiple access points. His hand rests casually near his sidearm, not out of immediate concern, but habitual readiness. Aiko is already collecting samples, her movements efficient, despite her obvious excitement. She crouches beside a cluster of plants that resemble ferns, but with fractal patterns that repeat with mathematical precision beyond what occurs naturally on our Earth. Flora shows significant divergence from our Earth, she reports, carefully preserving specimens in containment units. Cellular structures maintain basic similarities, but with radically different organization. These aren't just evolutionary variants. They've developed under fundamentally different rules. Her voice contains both scientific fascination and an undercurrent of something more visceral, the thrill of encountering genuine biological innovation. As we move towards higher ground, subtle details accumulate that reinforce our alienation from familiar reality. Insect-like creatures with symmetry patterns that shouldn't be possible. The way water in a small stream seems to flow with unusual viscosity. Even the air carries scents that trigger recognition receptors without matching any known reference. By the time we reach the ridge, daylight begins to fade. The sunset transforms the sky into colours that exist at the edges of human perception. Neither entirely purple nor orange, but something that shifts between states depending on how directly you observe it. We establish our base camp with practiced efficiency. The equipment deploys as planned, creating a secure perimeter with continuous monitoring. Environmental shields activate with a soft hum, creating a bubble of controlled conditions around our temporary habitat. The tension among us has shifted. Initial transit anxiety is transformed into the alertness of researchers confronted with genuine mystery. Night brings sounds unlike anything from our world. Not quite animal calls, more like ambient vibrations that occasionally form patterns almost, but not quite recognizable as language. Rhythmic pulses that suggest communication without revealing their source. Atmospheric conditions create visual distortions in the darkness, momentary illuminations that dance at the periphery of vision. Wright spends hours recording and analyzing the sounds, his specialized equipment capturing frequencies beyond normal human hearing. There's organization here, he insists, showing us waveform patterns on his display. Not random noise, these patterns repeat, with variations consistent with information transfer. Ibrahim monitors our physical responses to the new environment. Stress indicators elevated but within acceptable parameters, she reports. Minor anomalies in neural activity during sensory processing, consistent with adaptation to novel stimuli. I take the first sleep shift with growing unease. The stars above are in familiar configurations, yet they pulse with rhythms that make patterns swim before my eyes. The constellations almost seem to breathe, expanding and contracting in subtle harmony with the ambient sounds from the forest. Despite these disturbances, exhaustion eventually claims me. My dreams are vivid and strange, filled with spaces that fold in on themselves, and beings that exist at the corners of comprehension. I wake multiple times, uncertain of the boundary between dreaming and reality in this place where reality itself seems negotiable. October 18th, 2087. First full day on Earth 2. Dawn brings new discoveries. Wright calls us to examine markings he's found on nearby trees. They're not quite writing, not quite organic growth, something in between. The patterns repeat with variations that suggest information encoding. These were deliberately created, Wright insists, carefully documenting each example. The patterns maintain consistent elements across multiple instances, with variations that suggest syntactic structure. He traces one particularly intricate formation with his finger, stopping just short of touching it. This is communication. From whom? Rodriguez asks the question we're all thinking. His expression remains professional, but there's a new tension in his shoulders as he scans our surroundings with heightened vigilance. More importantly, when, Ibrahim adds, these markings show weathering patterns suggesting they weren't created recently. Our answer comes in the form of footprints discovered by Kozlov approximately half a kilometre from camp. Humanoid but with distinctly abnormal stride patterns and depth impressions, suggesting impossible weight distribution. The prints appear and disappear erratically, as if whatever made them alternated between walking on the ground and somewhere else. Whatever made these was bipedal, Kozlov reports, kneeling to examine the impressions more closely. Approximately human proportions, but moved in ways human physiology wouldn't allow. He points to particular impressions in the soil. Weight shifts here suggest joints with additional degrees of freedom, and these elongations indicate a stride that should be biomechanically impossible for a creature with this foot structure. Rodriguez establishes a new security protocol in response. No one explores alone, minimum teams of 3, constant communication, and all excursions limited to 2 hours. No one objects to these restrictions. By mid-afternoon, we've mapped a 2-kilometre radius around our camp and discovered what appears to be a path. Not constructed exactly, but a consistent absence of vegetation, following a definite pattern through the forest. The soil along this path shows evidence of regular travel. The vegetative pattern suggests frequent use, Nakamura observes, yet there's no evidence of tool use or artificial clearing. It's as if the plant life simply chooses not to grow here. The decision to follow it is unanimous, though approached with appropriate caution. Rodriguez, Kozlov and I take point, with the others following in tight formation. Park deploys small reconnaissance drones that hover ahead, transmitting real-time environmental data and imagery. 3 hours of careful progress brings us to the outskirts of a city, and all conversation ceases as we take in the impossible sight before us. The abandoned city. The structures rise from the landscape in ways that simultaneously mimic and defy familiar urban design. Buildings that should be glass and steel show subtle curvatures that create disorienting perspectives. Windows reflect light at angles that contradict their apparent orientation. Streets follow grid patterns that somehow connect points that shouldn't align in Euclidean space. It's like they understood our architectural concepts but interpreted them through entirely different spatial reasoning, I comment as we approach the first buildings. The underlying principles are recognizable, but the execution follows mathematics that shouldn't be possible in 3-dimensional space. From a distance, the city appears modern, perhaps even slightly advanced beyond our current technology. Sleek structures rise dozens of stories high, connected by elevated walkways that curve and intersect in complex patterns. Public spaces contain what might be artistic installations, sculptures that seem to occupy more space than their physical dimensions should allow. Still no life signs detected, Ibrahim reports, consulting her biometric scanner. No thermal signatures, no movement, no electromagnetic emissions, consistent with active technology. She adjusts settings, expanding the search parameters. But there's no evidence of disaster either. No structural damage, consistent with warfare or natural catastrophe. No remains, nothing to suggest a reason for abandonment. Rodriguez establishes a cautious approach plan. We move building by building, secure each location before proceeding. Standard contagion protocols in effect, full suit integrity at all times. He designates Kozlov and Park to manage our perimeter security as we advance. The city appears simply abandoned, preserved in a moment perhaps a decade or more in the past. Personal belongings remain in what we identify as residential spaces, food items in states of preservation that defy normal decomposition timelines. Technology, recognizable as similar to our mid-21st century designs, sits dormant in offices and homes. Screens, communication devices, transportation modules. They just left, Wright says, examining what appears to be a personal journal, with writings in a script tantalizingly similar to our own alphabets, yet impossible to decipher. There's no evidence of panic or forced evacuation. It's as if the entire population simply walked away from their lives simultaneously. What's most disturbing is how almost familiar everything appears. The living spaces contain furniture designed for humanoid bodies. The everyday objects suggest beings with similar needs and capabilities to humans. Yet, subtle differences persist. Doorways with proportions slightly too tall and narrow, eating utensils designed for hands with different articulation, written materials that seem to be read in patterns rather than linear progression. Park locates a central building with still functioning power systems. The structure dominates the city centre, its architecture more fluid and complex than surrounding buildings. Inside, screens display continuously shifting images, diagrams, symbols, what might be faces if faces could exist in 4 dimensions instead of 3. I can get some of these systems operational, Park says after examining the technology for nearly an hour. Their computing approaches are different but follow recognizable principles. The power source appears to be drawing energy from something I can't quite identify, but it's stable and apparently self-sustaining. As dusk approaches, Rodriguez makes the decision to secure our position rather than return to our original camp. We found what we came to study. We establish a defensive perimeter here and begin proper documentation. No one disagrees. The discovery of an abandoned but intact city is far too significant to leave unexplored. We select a mid-sized building near the city centre, one with easily secured access points and good visibility of surrounding structures. Our equipment transforms 3 connected rooms into a temporary research base with environmental controls, monitoring systems, and secure communications. As night falls in the city, the ambient illumination changes in ways that defy explanation. Sources of light appear where no fixtures exist. Shadows move independently of objects casting them. The very air seems to develop visual textures that shift and flow like cosmic tides. Ibrahim reports several team members experiencing mild disorientation and visual hallucinations. The symptoms are consistent across affected individuals, she notes with clinical detachment, though she's among those experiencing effects. Perception of spatial distortions, temporary visual artifacts, and occasional auditory anomalies. It could be dimensional transit after effects, she suggests, administering stabilizing compounds from her medical kit. Or environmental exposure. We should limit time outside our protective gear and monitor for progression of symptoms. Rodriguez establishes a rotating watch schedule, ensuring at least 3 team members are fully alert at all times. We maintain standard protocols. Any significant changes in condition or environment are to be reported immediately. I spend hours analyzing dimensional readings from our equipment. The data confirms my growing concerns. The dimensional fabric here isn't stable, I report during our evening briefing. There are fluctuations occurring at regular intervals, almost like tidal patterns, but in dimensional permeability rather than water. What does that mean in practical terms? Rodriguez asks. It means reality itself is more fluid here. The boundaries between dimensions aren't as fixed as they are in our world. These fluctuations explain the perceptual anomalies we're experiencing. Our brains try to interpret sensory input that doesn't quite conform to our dimensional framework. Wright has made progress with the written materials we've collected. There are recurring patterns that suggest numerical systems and possibly temporal references. If these markings indicate dates, this city was abandoned approximately 15 years ago. I record my concerns in my personal log before attempting to rest. The dimensional readings show subtle instabilities growing around us. Nothing immediately dangerous, but the patterns mirror the anomalies we detected from our Earth before departure. Sleep comes with difficulty, filled with dreams of corridors that lead to themselves, and voices speaking in geometries rather than sounds. October 19th, 2087. The Watchers. "We're being observed," Kozlov announces during our morning briefing. His tone remains professional, but the tension in his posture communicates more than his words. Movement at the perimeter of our detection range. Too consistent for animal behavior, too erratic for conventional human patterns. Overnight, our perimeter sensors recorded multiple anomalies, brief electromagnetic disturbances, momentary temperature fluctuations, and shadow movements that don't correspond to any visible objects. The patterns suggest intelligence and purpose. "I noticed something similar during my watch," Wright confirms. "Visual distortions that seem to focus around our equipment. When I approached, they dispersed, only to reform in another location minutes later. Throughout the day, each of us experiences moments of awareness, glimpses of movement, the sensation of eyes upon us. Figures that appear briefly at the edges of buildings or in reflective surfaces, gone when directly observed. Objects that seem to have been moved slightly when no one was looking. The distinct impression of presence without confirmable evidence. Rodriguez increases security measures. We maintain group integrity at all times. No one goes anywhere alone, regardless of distance or purpose. He authorizes Kozlov to deploy our more sophisticated surveillance technology, adaptive sensors designed to detect anomalies across multiple spectral ranges. Nakamura and Ibrahim continue analyzing biological samples from around the city, looking for evidence of what happened to its population. "The cellular structures we're finding show unusual properties," Nakamura reports, "almost as if the basic building blocks of life here were designed to exist partially in multiple states simultaneously." Park makes progress accessing the city's information systems. The interface challenges human comprehension, multi-dimensional displays that present information in layered patterns rather than sequential data. It's like they think in parallel processing rather than linear logic, he explains, eyes strained from hours of focus. "I'm adapting our translation algorithms to interpret the fundamental patterns rather than specific content." Night brings confirmation of our suspicions. Our surveillance system captures footage of humanoid figures watching our building. The images are distorted, as if the recording technology struggles to capture entities that don't fully exist within its perceptual parameters. Their movements are wrong. Limbs bending at impossible angles, bodies flowing rather than stepping, their forms occasionally separating into component parts before reassembling. "They're not fully materialized in our dimensional plane," I hypothesize, reviewing the footage with the team. "They exist partially in another phase of reality, which is why our equipment can only partially detect them, and why they appear distorted." "Are they hostile?" Rodriguez asks the practical question. "Unknown," Kozlov responds. "They maintain distance and haven't attempted to breach our perimeter or interfere with our equipment. Their behavior suggests observation rather than aggression." Our first direct contact occurs just after midnight. The entity mimics Commander Rodriguez's voice with perfect accuracy, calling Dr. Nakamura's name from outside our secure perimeter. The imitation is flawless in tone and inflection, including speech patterns specific to Rodriguez. Protocol prevents her from going alone, but the incident shakes everyone. "How could it know how I speak?" Rodriguez demands, reviewing the audio recording. We've maintained communications discipline since arrival. There haven't been enough samples for that kind of replication. Unless they perceive things differently, Wright suggests. If they exist partially outside our dimensional constraints, perhaps they observe us in ways we can't comprehend, seeing patterns and connections beyond our awareness. By morning, we've recorded dozens of observations. The entities maintain distance but demonstrate clear interest. Their numbers increase hourly, gathering around our building in concentric patterns that suggest organization and purpose. Rodriguez convenes an emergency strategy session. We need to determine intent. Are they former inhabitants, indigenous species, interdimensional entities? We can't proceed without understanding what we're dealing with. Nakamura volunteers to collect samples from the building's research wing, where activity appears most concentrated. If they're drawn to specific technologies or information, that might help us understand their nature and purpose. We establish communication protocols and monitoring, equipping Nakamura with additional sensors and protective measures. Wright develops a sequence of simple communication attempts based on mathematical principles that might transcend dimensional barriers. 15 minutes after her departure, Nakamura's transmissions become erratic. Visual feed shows normal progression through the research facility, but her verbal reports grow increasingly disjointed. There's something here. It's showing me. I can't. Her vital signs spike, elevated heart rate, neural activity patterns consistent with information overload. Rodriguez and Kozlov retrieve her, finding her frozen in apparent communication with an entity that dissipates as they approach. The experience leaves her physically unharmed, but profoundly affected. Back in our secure area, Nakamura's account chills us all. It wanted to show me what happened here, she explains once Ibrahim's treatments stabilize her condition. Not with words, it placed the knowledge directly into my mind. Images, sensations, concepts. She struggles to translate the experience into language. They were people once, researchers like us. They changed after extended dimensional exposure. Their perception expanded beyond physical constraints, transforming them gradually into what we're seeing now. The revelation is confirmed when Park manages to access more of the building's databases. With Wright's linguistic assistance, the images clarify, showing transformation from human-like forms to the entities we've observed. Documentation of a process spanning years, recorded with clinical precision by those experiencing the changes themselves. They're studying us, Wright realizes, just as we're studying them and this world. They're trying to understand our form of existence just as we're trying to understand theirs. The implications of this discovery fundamentally alter our mission parameters. What we're witnessing isn't an alien civilization, but a transformed version of beings similar to ourselves. The abandoned city isn't evidence of extinction, but evolution, or transformation into something our instruments can barely detect, and our minds struggle to comprehend. Ibrahim's medical scans reveal concerning patterns. Our brain activity is showing increasing alignment with the dimensional fluctuations I'm detecting. It's subtle but present in all team members. The effect is strongest in those who've had direct contact with the entities. Are we in danger of transforming like they did? Rodriguez asks directly. Insufficient data to determine thresholds or timelines, Ibrahim responds, but the process appears to have begun on some level in all of us. The revelation creates immediate tension within the team. Some advocate for immediate return to our base camp and activation of emergency evacuation protocols. Others, particularly Nakamura and Wright, argue for continued contact and study. This could be the most significant scientific discovery in human history, Nakamura insists. Evidence of post-physical evolution. We can't abandon it without understanding the implications. Rodriguez makes the difficult decision. We continue the mission with enhanced protection protocols, no direct entity contact without full team approval, and multiple safety measures. Our primary objective shifts to understanding what happened here and determining potential implications for our Earth. That night, the entity's behavior changes. Rather than merely observing, they begin interacting with our equipment. Sensors detect them accessing our data storage, examining our technology, attempting to interface with our communication systems. The interactions show purpose and intelligence, though their methods defy conventional understanding. They're trying to communicate, Wright concludes, not through language as we understand it, but through information exchange at a more fundamental level. October 20th, 2087. The truth. A breakthrough comes with the discovery of the city's central research facility. Located beneath the main administrative building, the structure defies conventional geometry, larger inside than outside, with corridors that loop back on themselves despite appearing straight. Navigation becomes an exercise in contradictory perception. Rooms that should connect don't, while spaces that should be separate overlap in impossible ways. The facility itself demonstrates advanced understanding of dimensional manipulation, I explain as we carefully map the structure. They weren't just studying dimensional physics, they were applying it to their environment. Inside, intact data archives hold the history of Earth 2. Wright works with Park to extract meaningful information from the alien interface. The story emerges piece by piece. Earth 2 developed similar dimensional gateway technology approximately 20 years before our Earth. Their initial explorations were successful, leading to expansion of their program. Scientific enthusiasm overcame caution as they discovered multiple parallel realities. They called it the Bridge Project. Wright translates from recovered documentation. Their goal was to establish permanent connections between parallel Earths, sharing knowledge and resources across dimensions. His expression grows more troubled as he continues translating. 15 years ago, something went catastrophically wrong. The records show increasing dimensional instability following repeated gate activations. Subtle at first, minor physical anomalies, perceptual distortions, then accelerating changes in the population nearest the main gateway facility. The transformation spread outward like a wave, affecting first those with direct exposure, then gradually the wider population. The dimensional barriers were weakened, I explained to the team, as the full picture emerges. Repeated transits created what they called dimensional erosion, areas where the fundamental laws separating realities became increasingly permeable. Exposure to the raw interdimensional medium altered them at the cellular level, then deeper. What happened wasn't an invasion or catastrophe as we understand it. It was transformation. Earth 2's population didn't die or flee. They evolved into something no longer fully anchored to one reality. Their consciousness expanded beyond physical constraints, perception no longer limited to a single dimensional plane. Most disturbing are the log recordings we managed to decode. Warnings about dimensional contamination and desperate attempts to reverse the process. Scientific teams worked frantically to contain the spread, then to adapt to the inevitable changes when containment failed. They're still intelligent, Wright insists after hours studying the records. The entities are trying to communicate. I believe they're warning us. The growing horror settles over our team as I vocalize the obvious conclusion. Our Earth is following exactly the same path. The Dimensional Gate program, the exploration mission. We're repeating their mistakes step by step. Further exploration of the facility reveals laboratories where the transformation was studied in real time. Documentation shows the progression from physical to post-physical existence, the gradual phase shift that allowed perception and eventually existence across multiple dimensional planes simultaneously. The process appears irreversible once begun, Ibrahim concludes after reviewing the medical data. Their attempts at creating barriers or reversing effects were universally unsuccessful. Rodriguez calls for an emergency strategy session. We need to determine immediate action. Do we continue information gathering or initiate emergency return protocols? The decision is complicated by Park's discovery that dimensional instability is increasing around our position. The readings suggest our presence, specifically our dimensional transition technology, is accelerating local degradation of dimensional boundaries. If we stay, we risk accelerating our own transformation, Ibrahim warns. If the patterns match Earth 2's experience, the process will eventually become irreversible. If we return to our Earth-carrying dimensional contamination, we risk initiating the same process there, I counter. We need to understand containment options before transition. The debate continues for hours, complicated by increasing entity activity around our position. Their numbers grow, their behavior more directed. They no longer simply observe, they actively interact with our environment in ways that suggest urgent communication attempts. Communication. Wright works through the night to establish communication parameters with the entities. Combining Earth 2 technology with our own translation systems, he develops a rudimentary interface that attempts to bridge the gap between dimensional perception states. By morning, he's created a system that interprets entity interactions as data patterns rather than conventional language. The process is imperfect, translating concepts rather than specific words, but it provides our first real communication channel. The message that finally comes through is simple but devastating. The thinning spreads, cannot be contained. Additional communications gradually clarify their warning. Each dimensional gate activation weakens the barriers between realities. The process, once begun, accelerates exponentially. Earth 2 scientists had recognized their mistake too late after the transformative process had already begun. They sent teams to other Earths, Wright translates from subsequent communications. They were trying to warn other realities not to make the same mistake. The revelation transforms our understanding of the entities. They weren't simply studying us, they were attempting to prevent us from triggering the same catastrophic transformation in our reality. More disturbing is the discovery that the entities were once human scientists on an expedition similar to our own. Their transformation allowed them to perceive and eventually traverse dimensions without technology, but at the cost of their connection to physical reality as we understand it. The gateway you used, comes another translated message, has already started the process in your world. The implications are staggering. Our mission wasn't just exploration. We were unwitting carriers of dimensional contamination. Each transit weakened the barriers between our worlds, accelerating the erosion process. Our return window opens in 6 hours. The urgency to leave grows when Kozlov fails to return from perimeter duty. His last communication reported unusual entity activity near our original arrival coordinates, then silence. Rodriguez organizes a search party, but returns without success. There's no sign of him, no equipment, no trail. His expression reveals the strain of losing a team member. It's as if he simply disappeared. Park discovers our return beacon is malfunctioning. Dimensional interference, he explains after diagnosing the problem. The instability is getting worse. The patterns suggest accelerating degradation of local dimensional integrity. Ibrahim's medical scans reveal the beginning of cellular changes in team members who spent the most time outside our protected zones. The process has already begun in us, she confirms, showing us the microscopic evidence of structural alterations that mirror the early documentation from Earth 2, currently minimal but progressing. We face an impossible decision: return to warn our Earth but potentially accelerate the contamination, or remain here and try to help Earth 2's inhabitants find a solution. The team divides on what action to take. Nakamura advocates for staying, convinced that the entities possess knowledge that could help us understand and potentially counter the process. They've had years to study the transformation. If anyone knows how to manage it, they do. Wright supports her position. The communication is just beginning to yield meaningful results. With more time, we could develop a more comprehensive understanding. Rodriguez and Ibrahim favor immediate return. Our primary responsibility is to our Earth, Rodriguez argues. We need to report our findings and implement containment protocols before the contamination spreads. The longer we stay, the more advanced our own transformations become, Ibrahim adds. We risk losing our ability to function in our native dimension if we delay return. As second-in-command and dimensional specialist, the final decision falls heavily on my shoulders when Rodriguez looks to me for a definitive recommendation. We need to reach the original gate coordinates, I decide after hours of agonizing analysis. We'll bring evidence to shut down the program, but destroy this side of the gate to prevent further dimensional bleeding. It's our best chance to contain the damage while preserving the knowledge we've gained. The plan satisfies no one completely, but provides a compromise all can accept. We begin preparations immediately, gathering essential data, samples, and evidence, while destroying anything that might maintain a connection between dimensions. If our hypothesis is correct, severing the connection completely might slow the erosion process, I explain as we work. It won't reverse damage already done, but could prevent further degradation. The return journey, our journey to the original Earth 2 gate coordinates, becomes increasingly harrowing as reality destabilizes around us. The city streets rearrange themselves as we travel, familiar routes suddenly leading to unknown destinations. Gravity fluctuates unpredictably, objects becoming momentarily weightless before returning to normal mass. The very air develops visible currents, flows of dimensional energy that ripple through space like heat distortions. The dimensional fabric is thinning rapidly, I report, monitoring our instruments. The fluctuation patterns suggest we're approaching a critical threshold. The entities accompany us, visible now even without specialized equipment. Their forms shift between states of materialization, sometimes appearing almost human, other times dissolving into patterns of light and movement that defy visual processing. They don't interfere with our progress, but maintain a constant presence. They're guiding us, Wright suggests. Notice how they appear more solid at intersections, indicating direction. 2 hours from our destination, we find Kozlov. He's alive but changed. His movements now share the fluid, wrong quality of the entities. His physical form occasionally blurs at the edges, portions temporarily phasing into something else before re-solidifying. Yet, his mind remains his own, his voice recognizable despite the strange harmonics that now accompany it. They're not malevolent, he tells us, his eyes shifting between normal human appearance and something that seems to perceive beyond physical space. They've been trying to repair their gate. They believe closing both sides properly might heal the dimensional breach. His transformation is both fascinating and terrifying, a preview of what awaits if we remain too long. Ibrahim's scans confirm accelerated cellular restructuring, his body adapting to exist partially in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. "Are you in pain?" she asks clinically, though her expression reveals deeper concern. "No," Kozlov responds. "It's more like awareness. I perceive things differently now. Layers rather than surfaces. Connections rather than separations." He struggles to explain concepts that human language wasn't designed to convey. They exist in a state of expanded consciousness. Physical reality is just one layer of their experience. More entities join us as we approach the gateway facility, guiding our way through the increasingly unstable landscape. Physical laws become suggestions rather than rules. Water flows upward. Objects exist in multiple locations simultaneously. Paths connect points that should be spatially distant. We reach the original gateway facility to discover equipment already in the process of activation. The structure itself pulses with energy, dimensions visibly thin within its walls as spaces overlap and intersect in impossible configurations. They've been working to synchronize with our return window, Rodriguez realizes as we observe entity interaction with the gateway technology. They understand we need to return. Kozlov confirms this. They've been preparing since our arrival. They understand the danger better than anyone. Not everyone wants to return. Nakamura argues we should stay, help the entities with their research. They've learned so much about the process. We might find a way to reverse it, or at least control it. This could be the next stage of human evolution. Wright supports her position. We're on the verge of understanding communication across dimensional states. The potential knowledge is incalculable. Our debate ends when a massive dimensional fluctuation rips through the facility. Reality itself seems to shudder, walls temporarily becoming transparent, revealing other spaces existing simultaneously in the same location. Rodriguez is severely injured, protecting Park from falling debris that materializes suddenly from elsewhere. The entity that was once Kozlov helps stabilize the gateway technology as Ibrahim and I prepare the remaining team for transit. The window is narrowing, he warns. The dimensional instability is accelerating faster than anticipated. The difficult choice is made for us. With Rodriguez injured and the gateway becoming increasingly unstable, we must leave now or lose our window entirely. What about you? I ask Kozlov as final preparations are completed. I can't return, he responds with surprising serenity. My physical structure is no longer compatible with single-dimensional existence. I belong here now. His form shifts as he speaks, temporarily revealing the more fundamental patterns that now comprise his existence. Someone needs to help them complete their work. Nakamura makes her decision in that moment. I'm staying too. She removes her transit equipment despite Ibrahim's protests. There's too much to learn, too much at stake. I can help them find a solution. At 8:45 p.m. local time, the dimensional gate activates. The facility trembles as energy surges through systems designed for more stable dimensional conditions. The entities help us position Rodriguez for transit, their forms solidifying into almost human appearance through visible effort. In the final moment before we step through, the entity that was Kozlov communicates one last message through Wright's translator. We will continue. Find another way. Close your gate forever. The return transit is chaos. Dimensional turbulence tears at our perception of reality. Colors invert, physical sensations contradict each other. Time dilates and contracts unpredictably. I focus entirely on maintaining our group cohesion, using my dimensional stabilizer at maximum output to create a bubble of relative consistency around our team. I perceive multiple potential outcomes existing simultaneously. Timelines where we arrive safely, others where we scatter across dimensions, still others where we transform during transit into something neither human nor entity. The possibilities collapse into a single reality as we emerge on the Helios station, but only 4 of us make it back: Rodriguez, Ibrahim, Wright, and myself. Park is gone, lost somewhere in the dimensional void. One moment he was beside me in transit, the next replaced by empty space, his signal vanishing from our group. Cohesion failed without warning. The reception team reacts with alarm to our reduced numbers and Rodriguez's injuries. Emergency medical protocols activate immediately. Quarantine procedures implemented around our arrival area. I deliver a preliminary report through isolation protocols, providing enough information to suspend all gateway operations, pending full investigation. Director Collins receives the news with visible shock. Her earlier enthusiasm for the project transformed to horror as the implications become clear. Quarantine, Helios Station, October 21st, 2087. This will likely be my final log entry. The evidence we brought back has convinced the Oversight Committee to suspend all gateway operations pending further investigation, but I fear it's already too late. Ibrahim's medical scans confirm cellular changes progressing in all of us who returned. The dimensional exposure has altered us on a fundamental level. The transformation appears slower than what occurred on Earth 2, but the pattern is unmistakable. Our stabilizers delayed but couldn't prevent the process. More concerning are the atmospheric readings from Earth. Subtle rippling effects, identical to those we observed in Earth 2's sky, have been detected over the Pacific Ocean. The dimensional breach has begun, spreading outward from our gateway's anchor point on Earth. I've transmitted emergency protocols to Earth authorities with instructions to dismantle all dimensional research immediately. Whether they'll act quickly enough remains to be seen. The political and scientific investment in the Gateway project creates powerful resistance to its termination, despite the catastrophic risks. From my quarantine window, I can see Earth below. Beautiful, familiar, and now inevitably changing. The border between dimensions has been compromised. The entities explained that once begun, the process cannot be completely stopped, only potentially slowed. Our team deteriorates in different ways. Rodriguez hasn't spoken since our return. His injuries healing with unusual speed, but transforming in ways Earth medicine doesn't understand. Wright spends hours staring at his hands, watching the subtle changes in how his fingers move, occasionally passing through solid objects when his concentration lapses. Ibrahim continues working frantically on potential treatments, though we all understand the futility. Sometimes in moments of dimensional shifting, I perceive Kozlov and Nakamura. Not clearly, more like impressions at the edge of awareness. They continue their work on Earth 2, now fully integrated with the entities, seeking solutions across multiple realities simultaneously. Earlier today, I briefly perceived Park as well. Not on Earth 2, but somewhere else entirely. The dimensional turbulence didn't destroy him, but redirected him to another reality. He appeared to be trying to communicate, but the connection was too tenuous to maintain. We closed the gate, but something came through with us. Not an entity, but the potential for transformation. A new reality spreading outward from the point of breach. Humanity stands at the threshold of change more fundamental than anything in our evolutionary history. I wonder what we will become. The entities weren't monsters, but our own future selves adapted to a different state of existence. Perhaps this was inevitable, the natural progression of consciousness beyond physical limitations. Not an end, but a metamorphosis. In my dreams, I already perceived the layers beyond conventional reality. Dimensions folded within dimensions. Existence as a symphony of intersecting possibilities rather than a single, definitive state. It's beautiful and terrifying simultaneously. The quarantine will fail eventually, not through physical breach, but because reality itself is changing. The borders between dimensions continue to thin. What began with our expedition will expand until it encompasses everything. I leave this record for those who come after, those who will witness the transformation firsthand. Don't fear what's happening. The entities weren't trying to warn us away from danger, but preparing us for transcendence. We reached for the stars and instead opened ourselves to something far stranger. Existence beyond the constraints of single-dimensional reality. Soon, humanity will understand what it means to exist between dimensions. Evolution forced by our own curiosity. I wonder what we will become.